Let's be honest, taking photos of black vehicles is actually quite difficult to make them stand out of the image. Now, ND Photo submitted a photo for me to edit, and it's actually really great, and there's a lot we can learn from this. So I'm going to do a full edit start to finish in Lightroom to showcase to you guys how I might edit a photo of a black car. So let's dive in. If you guys have watched my videos before, the first things that we always do is click on remove chromatic aberration and enable profile corrections. So you can see here there's quite a bit of warping in this, so it's doing quite a bit to make this photo normalized, so to speak. The second thing we do is we crop. So for me, I'm actually going to take advantage of the crop, and we're going to actually bring our eyes closer to the car. So I'm just going to bring this image in a little bit, as I feel like it's a little bit far away. So that's all I'm going to do here. We're going to align it on the third lines as best as we can to make sure that it is compositively positive. I made that up. All right, so to me, this image is very bright and we've got a dark car. So I'm gonna do a few things to make this car pop out of the image. I'm also going to utilize masking a lot as we get farther down. So we're gonna start by doing our base layer edit, and then we're gonna move into masking. So to start, I'm actually gonna bring the exposure down on the image to make a little bit more room for the car to pop out. And I'm just gonna straighten this a little bit because it doesn't look straight. If you hit R on the keyboard, that'll bring up your crop tool. I use it all the time. Now we have all the details in our highlights, so we don't have to do too much with that. Our shadows, we're gonna drag those up to bring details back in the car. Our whites, I'm actually going to add whites in this image to create more contrast in the image. Holding control and make sure I don't overexpose anything. And then same with blacks, we're gonna start dragging that down, hold option for both of those. We're gonna drag that down and make sure we're not losing too much detail. So there we go, and then I'll add a touch of contrast and we'll see what that does. But it's not doing too much, and I don't want that black car to continue to fade away. So the next thing we're gonna do is go into our tone curve. If you drag up on the upper third, you're gonna add brightness in the bright parts, and down in the upper third, we're gonna bring down exposure. So I'm actually gonna bring it down there. We're gonna go to our mid tones of the curve, and we're gonna bring that back up to about there. Looks good. And then in our bottom third, let's see how much contrast we wanna add or pop up to make sure we're getting more details back in that car. Again, black cars are so difficult. One thing I think we will do here is we're gonna go down and add a subtle fade to this image to make sure that we actually never lose details in the blacks. This means that no data can actually squish down past this point that we set here on the curve. If you look up in the waveform, the farther I move that, the more the waveform kind of squishes over. So it's a really cool and interesting way to think about fades, but that's how it works. Next, when it comes to colors, we are not gonna do too much. Maybe one thing I'm noticing here is that there's red in the brakes or on the wheels there. So maybe we'll actually pop those up to add a bit in the details there. See if we can pop in the luminance and saturation. And then I'm seeing blue come in on the car that is being reflected off of the buildings, which is totally fine. So we're gonna drag that down a little bit, and we'll add blue back in later in our color grading. And then drag down the aqua as well, because aquas tend to land in windshields, and in this case we have a lot of windows, so it's probably landing in there as well. Now this is still looking quite flat, and because it's a very flat and cement looking unilateral in its colors image, so I want to do a lot more to bring more color contrast into this image. Now we can use color grading. Now I'm just going to use my quick preset that I've built because I want to use classic cool. So that kind of cools the tones down a little bit. If you guys are interested in presets, which you don't have to be, I have some for you, and you can stack certain parts and colors and filters and blah, blah, blah. But anyways, we're not going to use those. I'm walking you guys through how to do this. Sharpening, we're gonna hold option while we drag up the masking tool. You can see everything here is being sharpened, and the farther I go to the right in those white lines, that's all that we're sharpening. So I wanna make sure that the car is sharpened and not much else. So there we go, we're gonna drag that there. If you have a noisy image, then this is where you would use denoise possibly, but his settings are up top there. and you can see that we don't need a lot of noise reduction because his ISO is quite low. All right, so now we have our base edit done. Everything's kind of figured out there. We're gonna start doing masks. Now, the first thing we always do is hit M on the keyboard. We're gonna get a graduated mask and we're gonna drag that from the bottom all the way up to the car, and then we're gonna start to reduce that. Now, the objective of this particular graduated mask is we're trying to remove bright spots and white spots from the photo to draw our attention to the car. If you're editing for Instagram or anything, if you're editing for editorial or a magazine or to put up on your wall, whatever it is, the subject is the car. And this goes for anything that you're editing. You want your eye to be drawn to the subject, so you can add light or take away light from your subjects to bring our eye's attention to light. So in this case, we are subtracting light from the ground, and we're going to hit subtract on that mask as well and make sure that our subject isn't being affected. You can see if I drag this mask all the way over it, it's actually not going to affect the car at all. Now, this looks very stupid, so don't do this, but it's just going to make sure that we're not reducing light once that mask does get up to the car, that these front parts aren't being affected, which is great. The second mask we're going to do is on the car itself. So we're going to hit select subject. Fantastic job, Lightroom. Thank you. Now, because we're working with a black vehicle, this is where things get a bit more interesting. So I'm actually going to try cranking the exposure, and this is going to be a bit interesting. So there, I think that car looks so stupid, but we're going to try now to just crank the contrast and see if we can make this car fit naturally in the image. Again, our objective here is to make that car stand out. And if we look at a before and after, let's see what we're doing here. It helps. It helps. I don't think we're there. So we're going to drag down the highlights, maybe boost the shadows, up the whites, and bring down the blacks to make it sit naturally. The blacks adds kind of that contrast to make it look like the rest of the image, like the dark black parts of the rest of it, so it feels like it's naturally supposed to be in this photo. You don't want this to look unnatural, so we're always looking to boost the car without making it stand out in a stupid way. So in order to add a little bit more dynamic to this, I'm seeing that the sun is over there. We've got a decently flat image because it's being blocked by the buildings, but I'm actually going to try and add a graduated mask. Again, I'm hitting M to get that. We're going to drag it from the top corner, and if you watch some of my last videos, I like to add a bit of a sun hit here to make it look like the sun is actually there and popping and giving us a bit more dynamic there. So to keep that exposed properly, I'm going to do this. I'm going to drag the highlights down, exposure up, and we're adding warmth to make it look like the sun. There we go. That looks pretty cool. And if you look up in the navigator, it kind of looks like the sun is hitting the roof of the building up top on the left and then cutting down. And it's just adding a little bit more dynamics to the photo. I like to do this when it's appropriate. Like, for example, this tends to be a pretty flat image, so we're going to just try and add more of that dynamic to give us more to look at. I don't know, just more to enjoy. But ultimately, it looks like ND Photo did a great job capturing this image, and thank you for trusting me with. Oh, I just had a thought. Select background. What if we just bring the background down a little bit? Oh, now we're talking. Okay. Keep the highlights high. Bring those shadows down. Okay. That looks kind of cool. That really helps the car stand out a little bit, actually. So I kind of like that. Yeah, I like that a lot. We could even get real moody if you want. You can desaturate there. And then the car really stands out. So lots of options when you start to use that background adjustment there. Final thing, I'll just mess with the color temps a little bit. But ultimately, this is kind of looking good. It's kind of looking good. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. If you did, give it a thumbs up for me. You could consider subscribing. I love teaching you guys everything I know about automotive photography, videography, the business of being an automotive photographer. I appreciate your time, and I hope I'll see you in the next one. Peace.